Hi, Aaron Hipp with Adaptive Tuning Systems here. I want to talk to you about our new product that I'll be releasing, which is the ATS Muzzle Brake. I've been working on this for a few months now, and I'm actually really excited about it. So we've done a couple things here. There's going to be two versions of it. There's going to be your standard self-timing muzzle brake version. These will be available in 6.5, up to 6.5 and 30 caliber variants, and it has a standard self-timing nut. So for those of you that don't like tuners or don't want to run a tuner, this is a muzzle brake that you'll be able to run just like you would any other muzzle brake. For those of you that are interested in a tuner muzzle brake version, we'll have that as well. It has a very similar nut design as what the self-timing version does, except it also accommodates our standard weights from the existing ATS lineup of barrel tuners. And we also will have a new weight that will be interchangeable, which is a larger, heavier weight that fits on the same existing mounts that we have now. For those of you that want to have a slightly heavier weight, we'll have this available for you as well. And this will work on the existing ATS barrel tuner mounts as well as the new ATS tuner brake. So you'll have an option if you want to go with a heavier weight, or you can go with the standard weight. I wanted to talk through a couple things that I've done on this brake. There were a few main objectives in my design for this brake, and those objectives were as top level recoil reduction, right? So I wanted to create a brake that was on par or better with all of the top performing brakes that are out there now. So that was priority number one. Priority number two was clearly, minimal movement from a barricade, right? So if we're shooting positionally, some brakes tend to recoil up, some brakes tend to recoil down. Move up, down. Some tend to move at angular movement, right, up into the right or up into the left, or so on and so forth. And so I wanted minimal movement on barricades as well. And then third, which a lot of people don't really think about, is I wanted to reduce that concussive force that the shooter feels, right? And so, any of us that have been to a match, have been shooting for a period of time, we understand that there's a lot of brakes out there that actually perform really well. And there's a lot of brakes out there that, many of those brakes that perform really well, we all kind of stand back and say, wow, that is really obnoxious. And by obnoxious, we're talking about that concussive force, right? We don't want to be beside that person when they're shooting. We don't want to be behind them. And if you're somebody that actually shoots those brakes, you feel it yourself, right? And so, the best way I could describe it is, it's almost like somebody kind of smacks you in the forehead with a small block of wood on every shot. And over time, you start to flinch and do things like that. Additionally, what a lot of people don't realize is that concussive force can affect your cognitive ability and your vision throughout the day. And you're going to ask, vision, cognitive ability. Well, the easiest way to describe this is there's a reason that, the military and law enforcement toss flashbangs into rooms to disorient people. Now, if you can imagine that you're basically standing behind a rifle all day long and pulling the trigger with a very loud muzzle brake that has concussive force on you, those same things take a toll on you over the course of the day. And so at the end of the day, historically I've had headaches, right? I have, maybe it's mild, maybe it's less mild, or more extreme based on how I'm feeling today. But I've never come out of a match where at the end of the day, I didn't have at least a mild headache from shooting all day long. And so that was something I really focused on too. It's like I hated that, right? And so this break is one of the key points is minimizing the concussive force that the shooter feels. And I've had like 30 or 40 people that have shot this break, and they've all said the same thing, like, Aaron, you're on to something here. Like, this is pretty amazing. And a lot of those shooters were also suppressor shooters that had switched to suppressors because they didn't like the concussive forces that they felt with brakes. And so, the way brakes have really handled that in the past is you've got a high performing recoil reduction brake that's very obnoxious. And by obnoxious, I mean you feel that concussive force. It's loud, it's painful, it's annoying, right? And so some other brakes have gone to more of a flat port design. The thing about a flat port design is it redirects those gases outwards. You have less concussive force on the shooter, but you don't have the recoil reduction of an angled brake. And so what I've done is I've found a way to design these ports and bias these ports in such a manner that we have an angled port brake. So you have the highest reduction of recoil that's possible with an angled recoil brake, right there, like I said, with the top performing brakes. But you still don't have that concussive force on the shooter or even the person sitting beside them. And I've shot matches where I've had somebody laying beside me and I asked them, like, hey, how was that? And they're like, you know what? I didn't even realize it was you shooting. I knew somebody was shooting, but I wasn't getting blasted in the face. I didn't have that concussion on me. And so that was really important to me. So we've done a couple unique things with this. This brake accommodates all of that, and then it does a couple other things that have always just kind of been little pet peeves of mine. And so some of those are, there's a lot of brakes out there that have left hand threads for their jam nuts, and so we always kind of get in this little battle of, all right, crank one way, wrench one way, one wrench the other way, in order to line everything up. And then when it comes time to remove the brake, you're like, all right, which one do I crank left and which one do I crank right? So this is your typical threading of, look, lefty loosey, righty tighty. So one of the other things that I've done is a lot of the existing brakes out there, there's a slight flange on the front of the nut up here. And so if you think about when you install that against a barrel, you've got a flange in the front, you've got the barrel on the back, and many times you end up having to try and find a very skinny crescent wrench to get in here in order to actually get on the flats and tighten it. Or sometimes you end up just putting the wrench on a small portion of it because the narrowest part of the crescent wrench is up front. So what I've done is I've removed the flange. These flats are slightly larger diameter than the brake body. So if you wanted to use a crescent wrench that's 5 inches wide, you could, right? Because at any time you can get on the nut itself, and you're always a slightly larger diameter than the brake body. So you're never going to have this interference between the brake and the nut flats. And so that was one of the things I wanted to focus on. And then there's a set of flats out here too. So if you do want to use 2 wrenches, you can use 2 wrenches and tighten them up. The nice thing about this design is you can put it on with 1 wrench. It's pretty easy to do. Tighten it up on the barrel, back up the jam nut with a slight angle, and then you can crank the brake on and everything will stay tight, and you're good to go. Again, I think this is going to very quickly become one of the most liked brakes in the PRS. Like I said, I've worked on this really hard. I'm really proud of it. The amount of recoil reduction that you have on here is on par with the top performing brakes that are out there in all of the recoil reduction tests. The muscle movement on barricades has been just wonderful. I've had this thing on like an 8-pound to 11-pound 308 off of a barricade, and an 8-pound, 11-pound 308 with a rounded HS precision stock, and the movement is just, it's nothing compared to a lot of the brakes that I've shot out there. So I'm really happy with the way it's performing there. And then, like I said, we're going to have this in 2 variants. We're going to have the standard self-timing version now, and the standard self-timing version, and then we'll have the tuner muzzle brake version. And the difference is the mount on the back side. And then, like I said, we'll have additional, if you want to move to a heavier weight for the tuner muzzle brake version, or move to a heavier weight on just the existing ATS barrel tuner, it will fit on there as well. For the black nitride version will be available in approximately 2.5-3 weeks. They're out right now. So let me know if you have any questions, and I appreciate it. Thanks.